If you're ready.
Yep.
Okay, welcome everyone to the Monday, November 3rd Policy Committee meeting for Wallingford-Swarthmore School District. It is currently 6:01 and we can call the meeting to order.
Never know quite what to say. Yes, let's call the meeting to order. One would think I would have figured this out by now.
All right, so we'll call the meeting to order. And roll call, Ms. Walkman.
Here.
Ms. Williams.
Here.
Ms. Delay.
Here.
Ms. Whitson.
Here.
Great. He's here. And if we go to meet the minutes from the October 7th meeting, do I have a motion to approve those minutes? So moved. We have a second?
Second.
Who's first? Okay, very good. All right. And that moves us to the superintendent's update.
Thank you, Dr. Selini. Just two things for tonight. One is that I'm really pleased that our equity statement is not posted online. So I don't need to that policy. So I just want to thank for statement, remember policy, and second about the feedback tonight. And the second thing is just moving back to our previous conversation at the beginning of the school year about the electronic devices policy. One of our key deliverables is the evaluation of the policy. I just wanted to know that I'm on track for sharing the plan for the evaluation of the policy, which will happen this winter straight on my November 21st update for the board. So just wanted to give you an update. Thank you.
Actually hit on, as I was looking back at notes from this meeting, hit a note from feedback that we would have received from a member of the public. And so it was on my mind actually as I came up.
Very good. That moves us to second readings. We had 11 policies on the agenda last month. Are there any questions, comments about those?
So I think that these went through, we have a little bit of conversation on a couple of them, but for the most part, they're pretty straightforward for the most part, reflecting changes in law regulation. So I did not, I'll just go down and see any questions or comments on these.
I do not. I think just under 222 tobacco and vaping, did he talk about under the exemptions, just sort of better understanding medical marijuana?
Yeah, so that's, so I did look into that. That definition comes. So that definition comes from the crimes code, so the crimes code, and the device is excluded from the definition. So it wouldn't be any product, but the device is excluded in the state law. So that definition of active products matches the definition of active products in Title 18, Pennsylvania versus Pennsylvania crimes code.
Just, I'm sorry, because I think maybe I'm just not remembering it correctly, but are we saying in this policy that we do not have a medical marijuana exemption? In other words, we will not permit to use that.
But it is clarified that a parent can come pick up their child and
Well, so
let them up on the,
so the answer to that,
on the stove.
we don't have policy that speaks to that topic of what parents might do. That would be a request that student services would handle. And student services on an individualized basis would come up with a plan with the parent. Or
So that would be like 504 or in the IEP.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
That was it. Yeah.
That's the question.
Yeah. We did talk a bit too about the meetings policy. So looking, I reread that one, and the language about that privilege, to speak before the board is gone. That was one of the concerns. And then the other thing, I think we did these maybe the other one in the meeting, but
Yeah.
it provided, the earlier language had provided an opportunity for a single board member to essentially place something on the agenda at the meeting. And that was actually removed just for. Yeah, it was in the other one, I heard a problem. So I was just doing a conversation. So
So then we come to one moving on those boards of work. Right. Okay, that moves us to our first readings. We'll start with 226 student searches, and I will turn it over to Mr. Piazza.
Sure, so 226, policy is actually unchanged. There was an AR that was missing. In the sense that the policy required an AR. We had flagged that one had not been developed, so we developed one. And it's there. The search procedures are consistent with state law. Generally for individualized searches, reasonable cause is the threshold for like school-wide searches, like if the principal or administration, wherever they want to do like a school-wide search, those are, we don't need reasonable suspicion for those kinds of searches, so long as they're carried out like either school-wide or building-wide, not individualized to a particular student.
I do not, we'll just go down the line. I mean, I'm assuming this is all very legal, the standard, yeah, we don't really have a lot of wiggle room, I would assume, so.
I have a question, because you're talking about searching minor children. I thought that a parent has to be present if it comes to any conversation, like the principal. I mean, you can search, but you can't have any dialogue with that student unless a parent is present. And this just says notify.
Yeah, so there's no legal requirement that a parent be present. Particularly where the reasonable suspicion threshold has been met, parents are entitled to notice. And I believe the policy speaks to.
I mean, because that's by law. I mean, you can't talk to a minor child without a parent present
Well,
in any school setting.
well, staff members speak to children all the time, right? It's different for law enforcement. So if law enforcement, particularly that searches, they would have to follow law enforcement procedures around consent. It's different when a school administrator is searching a student or talking with a student based on something that happened in school. So if there's a fight in the hallway and the school counselor or the vice principal comes down and says, okay, we're going to interview students to talk about what did you see, what happened, who threw the first punch, right? You don't have to have a parent present for those communications. That's within the school.
No, but I'm just talking about to search someone's private property, to search their car,
Right,
to search their backpack,
yeah,
to search, well, the locker is school. But their personal, I thought, is protected under law, that,
not if the reasonable suspicion threshold has been met. And in the case of an emergency, the student doesn't need to be present. Generally, like if you're gonna search a student's backpack, the student would have a right to be present while the administrator is searching the backpack. In the case where there's a thought that, something's going to explode in the backpack, or there's something in the backpack that's dangerous, that threatens the safety of the building, the child doesn't even need to be present for that search. Now, that's a much higher standard. That has to be like an immediate threat to safety and welfare. But parents don't have to be present for searches of students or searches of their bags or their lockers. Many times they're not, right? Most times they're not. They do get notified, but they're not present. Searches.
are they notified prior to the search or after it happens?
My experience is that generally it would be after the fact. It's not necessarily always that way, but it usually happens after the fact because usually something happens. The school is responding to some kind of report that someone's got something in their jacket or in their backpack. It's concerning. A search would be conducted, and the parent would be notified. Now, again, that's different. It's a different process if law enforcement comes into your building. You have a separate MOU with your law enforcement that outlines like what are the responsibilities of the school, what are the responsibilities of the school district. in those cases. And the procedures that law enforcement have to follow when interrogating suspects or interrogating potential participants or victims of a crime, that's a different set of rules that's governed by criminal code.
Okay.
That was the connection.
Well, while we're reconnecting, we
It,
can
it
move
says
on.
it's reconnected.
Policy 227 is controlled substances in paraphernalia.
And that was one, the context there was that this policy did not exactly speak the same language as the discipline policy, and the tobacco policy. So they are now all cleaned up. They're all consistent with one another. High school administration had flagged some language that was in 227 previously that was outdated and inconsistent with policy 218. So once these once the 222 and 227 revisions go through, all three of your policies on tobacco, controlled substances, and student discipline will all speak the same language, so to speak. And because one of the reasons that the searches policy is on the agenda is because both 222 and 227 frequently involve searches. Right.
I will receive this. Policy number this.
And one of them has an and. And I don't think the and should be in there.
You know, I think. Meaning there's just an extra word.
Yeah, it's like and, it says 1 and 2, and at the end of 1, it says and.
In policy.
I saw.
No,
So they try guess.
no, it's only like 4 and they're integrated.
Okay.
It might be under searches, I don't know, but the and shouldn't be in there. It's like 1, 2, and then it states 1, and then it says and, like it's a continuation of 1 and 2 together. Like it either doesn't need to be 1 and 2, it's just 1, which is a long sentence, or take the and out.
Yeah, I can't find it, but we can look for that as we look through. Maybe just do a search.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that in the policy or the AR?
Are we? Trying to find what you're not talking
Yeah.
about. So I think it might be 226, where it says delegation of responsibility. It says, we shall provide building, blah, 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 ensure that students, and then and number 3, ensure that part of the
Oh,
search, is that what you're talking
yeah.
about? All right, so it's 226.
But that's
correct.
that's actually correct.
Yeah, because it is all 3 of those, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So the and stays in there?
Correct. Should be. So they're on policy change, there's.
I just closed it. Here.
It's essentially like taking the sentence, so in a certain column.
2 and.
See? Yes, but doesn't that seem like and ensure that the prior to a search, so why do you need number 3? It's just a long 2. If you leave the and in there.
This is referring to, this is ensure that students and their parents, guardians are notified. That the
Contents of the-
contents.
And administration regulations, period. And then ensure that the prior to a search, student shall be. So I'm saying that and,
But the thing is, this is referring to notifying them that the policy exists, and this is notifying them that prior to a search, students are notified.
yeah, but so it's 1, 2, 3 bullets,
Yes.
It could be
not an and.
What is it?
I think that and means that we have to do. Is that correct? Yes, so that and is correct, because it
You
can
do all
be,
three.
yeah. Because it's like the totality of all.
It doesn't seem correct, grammatically correct.
It's essentially just taking a sentence.
We'll take a look at
Each
it,
of
we'll
them,
take a look
yeah.
at it again before it comes back for a second reading.
Okay.
Put it on the list.
All right, so we were on, we
227.
were at 227, and I think, okay, so just go back down. the line.
Right, the receives is,
Yep.
under purpose is misspelled. I was thinking,
Did you change it?
No.
No, I understand. Okay. I went right past it.
Yeah, for me, so under guidelines, so that first big long paragraph where we're talking about, let's see. No student, employee, visitor, guest, or any other person may blah, 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 and it says, while on school premises at any district sponsored activity anywhere. I just wondered about the inclusion of the word anywhere. Is that sort of assuming that or is that just,
I think what's meant there is that like. School sponsored activities could be like at an away football game or at a competition that occurs at a statewide
you're
conference,
trying to
right?
specify, but it could be off.
Yeah, maybe anywhere is not the right word, at
I
any school,
understand.
at any district sponsored activity, you could say like regardless of location.
Yeah,
I mean, if that's,
see what your point is. That's fine. It doesn't.
That's another grammatically incorrect. Change that.
Grammar, please, down here.
The other thing I wondered about with this one is, so for me, when I read it, I think I'd like a better understanding of how an infraction that occurs off school property is handled versus on school property. That part was a little unclear to me.
if it's in the context of a district sponsored activity.
Well, no, it almost sounded like if we were to receive, knowledge of an infraction or drug use, the use of a controlled substance outside of school.
So the school district wouldn't have jurisdiction to
Is that right?
respond
Okay,
if it was not connected to school or a school sponsored activity or
Okay.
anything like that.
maybe I'm confusing this with another policy. Let me just see if I can find what I was.
You're not
That's something
the
else.
black lettering. Lettering on that same paragraph in the guidelines. The policy shall also apply to school conduct that occurs off school property.
Yes,
So there, okay, so is that in the policy?
Yes.
it is. Maybe that's exactly what it is.
Right, so. Correct, so what that's getting at is that there are certain times when students are not on school property where the school district does have jurisdiction to regulate conduct. It would be, if for purposes of this policy, it's generally at like an off-site field trip or an athletic competition. But there are also times when, if you were somehow the school district were to be able to show that a student was using their district laptop to facilitate the illegal sale of drugs or something like that, right? Even though that happens off the school property, that activity is still prohibited because it's using our property. So
Okay.
there are very limited circumstances where when students are not in school, the school district still has jurisdiction. Those limits frequently get tested in litigation. So we kind of left the language a little bit more broad to just say whatever the current status of the law is, whatever our authority is, we have the
Okay.
full right to exercise that authority.
Yeah, so I think for me, I'm wondering if we could make that a little, I understand the value of keeping it broad, but. And honestly, when I first read the policy, I had to second guess myself because I didn't think that we had
Right,
the authority to weigh in on what happens, say, for example, we come in from a weekend and we hear anecdotal reports of, hey, there was this thing that happened over the weekend, and we're not, this policy doesn't give us the authority to go on and investigate those incidences or apply discipline towards that. So it seems like when we say conduct that occurs off school property, to me, I feel like that was the impression I got when I read the policy. So I'm wondering if it can be made a little more.
So it should say school-sponsored activities, which means like a field trip to Hershey Park. They're not allowed to dump the soda out and put vodka in the bottle that looks like water.
But it's
And
not
by the
only,
end of the day, they're drunk.
it's not only school sponsored though in this particular context, so, yeah.
Just wondering if I could hit up, I think there's sort of two key provisions here. It's, if it happens off of school property, then that and is really important in it. It's and otherwise violates policy, school rules, or agreement within the handbook. And so I wonder if we, Attorney Diazio, would it be possible to show it as like there's sort of two pieces that have to go together there. We could maybe call out almost like a litmus test that it is conduct that happens off the school property. And maybe the kind of otherwise often isn't just sort of like common layman's terms, because it sort of means a little bit linguistically that it also violates as opposed to otherwise. But I agree that the otherwise just sort of makes it like was it which way is it?
And I went to a webinar at the PSBA, and they were saying that a lawsuit was won because the policy was broadly written and it was left up to interpretation. And the plaintiff won the case because of the broadness of the policy, which that made me think when you said broad, I'm like, oh, that's what they talked about, that you have to be more, you have to say what you mean.
right.
So it's no wiggle room, it's no interpretation.
That could have been, I'd have to check what case that was. There was a cheerleading case a couple years back. Language that says like, behavior that school officials determine to be unbecoming of a high school student, right? That's a very loose standard, right? You could ask 10 different people, what does that standard mean? They would give you 10 different answers. I think this language says that we regulate conduct that violates our policies and our rules, as long as the courts recognize it to be within our jurisdictions to regulate that conduct. I think we have to be, the specificity that we're putting in here is that the conduct has to violate our policies. That's, in my mind, objective enough to kind of pass that.
Okay.
I think the point is worth taking.
So lastly, just this whole idea of constructive session. I wasn't familiar, I mean, I had never heard that before, so I get a concerned, so. I guess when I see something like that, it just seems so, I guess ill-defined, so I wonder if, I'm just thinking about bias, that, like how that may come into play in the decision like this to pursue constructive possession. I think, like, I want to know what that looks like in practice. Someone saying, that person looks a little suspicious to me today, like, is that going to trigger?
I think the way that I've seen this come play out in schools is where you have multiple students who are involved in some activity or some transaction. And someone is holding the item and others are not. All of those individuals that are involved in the transaction are culpable of the activity. If you, so that's usually how it's seen.
I see, so it's not, so. It's not as random
Correct.
as it sounds.
No, no.
Yeah. Right. Constructive consumption. So you're saying it's not this. Other. Okay. Another question.
We're sitting here having this sidebar and I'm going, I don't even know what constructive possession is. Maybe we need it. I know what it is,
an
though,
example
that
might
is.
be, a student number one is looking to sell an illegal substance to student number two. But student number one gives it to student number three and says, student number two is gonna come get it. Right? Student number one, when the transaction happens, right, isn't in possession of any unlawful because they gave it to someone else, right? That's an example of where someone doesn't have actual possession of something that's improper, but they control the transaction enough that they can be deemed to be in possession of the unlawful substance. Or they take a substance and they say, at 3 o'clock today, go into room B226 and I'll have left this improper item behind the box of tissues on the fridge, right? They've arranged for that transaction to happen. They're not in possession of the substance when that person comes in and takes it, but they are still culpable because they essentially had possession. They placed it somewhere, they gave it to someone who then completed the transaction. That makes sense?
Yeah, but is there another word that can be used?
We can think
So
about
that-
that. I mean, constructive possession is a legal term, but we can think about a different word. Yeah, I mean,
We're not lawyers.
well, you want the policy to be able to do what you need it to do when challenged, right? I can look at that. I can see if there's a different word. Yeah, we can do that for next month. I'll give it a shot.
First, I played like crossword puzzles or something.
Yeah, that's a good, yeah, we'll work on that.
All right, so- We've got the,
Just.
I was just gonna summarize the two things that we were doing
Oh, I
in this
see what you're
particular
saying.
policy. No, that's okay. So we have the also instead of and would otherwise and would also violates fully policy such and such. And then Mr. Diazio thinks that you can get us with the language there. Did you want to cover anything on the AR or I think you're okay? I think so. Great. It's fine.
227.1 is just a repeal because its contents are now in 227 and 222.
Any questions for me? We just asked real quickly about the 227 AR.
Yeah.
The second and third paragraphs seem duplicated to me. I'm just trying to figure out what's different about them.
The second and third.
The second and third paragraph. So whenever it is determined that a student violates the policy for the second time, they shall be suspended for up to 10 school days and may be referred for possible expulsion. And then the second paragraph, third.
So the second paragraph deals with being in possession or under the influence. And the third paragraph is when you are selling or distributing. So as a
Oh,
general matter,
okay.
sale and distribution is generally treated.
I see. Sorry, thank you.
I have a question about the new policy, or it's just, those are treated slightly differently, is that common?
Yeah, there is, yes, and there is law around this and PIAA guidance around anabolic steroids.
I figured there must be,
Yes.
I thought it was odd that.
Those like first violation, second violation, third violation, that's all consistent. with
Right.
PIAA guidance.
Thank you.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions about 227?
Just a repeal,
Yeah.
this is how to roll to,
Correct.
So 351.
351 is just the staff controlled substances policy. It was named, it was titled something differently before, drug and substance abuse. Change that to controlled substances to make that match the student policy. This one didn't need as many changes. We just needed this one too.
just a small, take a look in the last, paragraph.
Okay.
In accordance with state law, the superintendent shall annually, the. Some things, in accordance with state law, the superintendent shall annually
By the required deadline for all instances of possession.
Oh, so got it. Okay, yeah,
Yeah, the strike through.
the strike through of the D, is throwing my
Yeah.
entire rhythm of reading that off. Okay, that makes. Sense. I had no other questions. Any other questions?
Can you talk a little bit again about like the delineation between on-site versus outside of work? That was just unclear to me.
Yeah, so I think where you really see, schools have to deal with this is when off-site use. When someone comes to work under the influence, right, or comes to work impaired. I don't know how often you see that or in your
I've seen
realm
my
of
career.
Any specific questions? I mean,
So it's basically, if they're showing up to work and it's impairing work,
correct.
that's, okay.
Is there something is there something that, this just reminds me of a case at Elwyn where it was after work and a group of Elwyn employees were at the bar, but they were discussing a client. And the client's uncle or some family member was in a booth
Too far.
not too far away, and it caused a big,
That would be
State.
conduct that could be disciplined for, not so much because of the bar or the location, but more just sharing confidential information, improper disclosure. We have lots of policy around that, record keeping practices, that's where the violation most likely would be.
okay, so does it pertain to if they have on school gear and they're
The rules around disclosure apply no matter what, right? If someone wears a Wallingford-Swarthmore t-shirt, the rules don't necessarily change just because they're wearing something that's school property or anything like that. But certainly, if they're being paid, if they're on school time, and that would be one thing, but otherwise, the rules off campus are the same rules around disclosure that would apply on campus.
Any other questions or comments on this one?
That takes us to 829, our equity statement policy.
this was very well written, whoever wrote it. Oh, it was very well written.
Thank you. Here's a first start of a list of things that I would suspect that maybe the board administration might be looking for in a policy. The thought would be that once the board gets the policy language right, we would develop an AR around each of AR language around each of these topics. And what I would envision is an AR that would sort of have, headings in bold, and those bold headings would probably be 10 of them, right? And we would have language about each item in this list. But tried to give you a comprehensive list here of things that other clients have adopted, and certainly you're welcome to make it your own, but hopefully it's a good study.
I'll go down the line. I have maybe on the YouTube. I'm really interested to see what the response.
It's funny that you say to narrow this down and then do the AR, because in my head, when I was reading it, I was like, it would really help me if I had an AR to kind of like fine tune, because this is this to me is like big picture, and so that's just how my brain works. So
We will have the AR done
okay,
by the time this comes on the agenda for the second reading
okay,
at the next meeting. That's certainly a very doable task.
Yeah.
And then you'll be able to see both of them. And we can always, this is a policy that could take 2 or 3 months to get this one done, right? It's okay.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. And I also tell clients, this is also a policy, I think, a lot of times boards struggle because they think it's gotta be perfect. And this is one that I always say, start with where you're at and then modify it, bring it back. Let's come back in 3 months if you missed something. If a staff member has an idea that something was missing, bring it back. Right? You can bring it back every month. So,
that makes me feel a little better, because as I was reading it, these are really huge, and I felt like they just had a lot of pressure to make sure everything looks exactly right, and that we know exactly what everything means, and even down to, we can totally wordsmith this, but periodic reporting to the board, how often is that gonna be, like all those little things that like, so I think I'll just kind of leave it there and not go with the flow on this one, and I'll wait to see that.
I was so excited reading that. I think it's great. I think it's thrilling because I think it's basically codifying what we've been doing, like the work we've been plugging away at, for a good number of years now. And honestly, I don't know, I read it and I felt so proud to be part of this board and this work, and the fact that we're, putting this policy forward right now. I mean, I took a look at our neighboring districts. I don't see many of them having these policies, so, I just, again, feel proud to be part of it, and I'm glad that it's stayed. I think it sounded great. The only thing that I wondered, and it's just a small thing, under number, I think it's delegation of responsibility, number 6. Where we talk about number 2, under number 6 says other members of the community. And I just wondered if it would, be worthwhile sort of like giving examples of who that might include. Or maybe using the word stakeholders, or, just to kind of make it a little more meaningful, maybe
Sure.
what that might look like. Yeah.
your stakeholder groups,
Yeah.
everyone agree with that?
But honestly, I think thank you very much. Yeah, this is great. And I think it sort of demonstrates how much you get the work that we've been doing, so it feels like a partnership also.
Well, I was just over the moon, and I wanted to know who. I thought Dr. Johnston wrote it, but I forgot we have a legal eagle, because I don't think that it's something we've necessarily been working on, because we were cited for not having an equity statement in one of our audits. So to have that this year and to go forward with a policy that addresses systemic barriers, leveling the playing field, and it's spelled out exactly what I think Dr. Johnston's vision is for the district and moving forward. And that as a board now, with this policy, we're given we're involved, like we have to take this serious. It's not just on the teachers and the principals, it's the board making sure that these timelines and these reportings are done. And that we're really on top of the governance of it. And I just think that it's a long time coming and you know, change is gonna come and it has come. I don't. I mean, I guess we could, you know, we might need to take a little more time to digest it and to really see if we can be committed to what it's saying. And before we can expect teachers, because we got some teachers that might not agree with this policy and might have a problem with it being implemented. So, but I don't think he left any room for anybody for the union to get involved.
I think it's, you know, it will work as long as it's in what you just said, and then that, like, as long as the board stays, focused on making sure it's put into practice through the kinds of questions that we ask, and the data that we ask for, you know,
Yeah,
I know that
because it talks about disseminating
Yeah.
data,
yeah,
and that's what it's gonna be based on.
and we want it to
That-
survive past all of us, right?
That's right.
You know, we're all here for whatever time we're given, or choose to be part of this, but if we do it right in the implementation, when we do our job as a board, then it will have, hopefully, it will last
Lasting.
long beyond us, eventually, that's what. Because it won't, we're not gonna fix all these things overnight, we have to recognize that too, like.
Yeah, but first we had to recognize that
That
it
we needed it.
exists
Yeah.
and that we needed it.
Yes.
And with that being said, how do you introduce a new policy? Is this under professional development that Dina, you have to come and give an in-service on this policy and people have to sign off on it? That they
I mean, we
they
could do that with different policies. We don't currently have that practice here where we have employees sign off on a particular policy.
I think this is one that we should. That they received it and it was explained to them. I mean, it's always the first time for everybody.
Yeah, no, it's considerably for sure. I know that like the really important policies that we're getting embedded into something that I have to sign and say, I read it. They give me the opportunity to ask questions about it, and I will be held accountable to it. My name to it, so.
So I'm just wondering how it will roll out. Like, will it just be on the website as a new policy or before it's posted, we'll have.
I wonder if there's an opportunity to share it with building administrators for them to be if they do at the building level.
Yeah, I wonder, actually, if you don't mind, so I think to the point that was made earlier, we want to make sure we're narrowing in on the right actions through this policy. That will inform then how we roll it out. So I hadn't, to be honest, I haven't sort of conceptualized exactly how we're going to decide it. So I'd rather not start being committal tonight, but hear that as a question, hear that as an appropriate challenge for us. The one that we will duly take back and consider as part of this discussion, what would the rollout for session board policy be? We
That's
don't want
fair.
it just with a lot of shelf. This has to be active in our program. So I would, we can absolutely.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, and I like to mention, that the PPD, that feels less sort of, I gotcha, and more support, you know, in the context of, we're learning together and we're gonna develop these skills. And by the way, you have this policy.
Right.
I have one question in, so the resources and, what is it, here, in number 4, so my question was, which are geared toward the understanding and appreciation of individual cultural uniqueness and differences. And I would want to reread it again as in totality, but I wondered if I appreciate calling out that specifically the individual cultural uniqueness and differences, and yet in putting it in there, is it limited in would this, the provision of resources, materials, assessments? There's more to that I know goes into the selection and what we are doing than just cultural uniquenesses and differences. So as I was reading it, I was thinking about neurodiversity, for example, and how we build things like thinking about neurodiversity into our material and so forth. So I just asked this, I don't have a particular answer to that. I just more for consideration. And do we think that's already covered in other aspects of the policy, or do we need to widen the lens there just a little bit?
I wonder, is the word cultural,
Individual.
like if we just took that word out?
Right,
Cultural
yeah.
differences. Maybe if you put it as individual uniqueness and culture differences.
Yeah. That might be, yeah, and I don't want to take away from the fact that we want to make sure that we're being culturally sensitive and appropriate, but can be a little bit.
May I suggest, individual differences are two words that tend to go together more often.
Yeah.
And so cultural uniqueness, I also don't want to make cultures a difference as it relates to culture could be viewed as sort of a deficit.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Maybe I think it's sensitive there, but individual differences is commonality and culture.
I like that.
It's a little bit more.
I like that. It keeps them both there.
So individual differences and cultural uniqueness.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
okay.
Great.
Thanks. That was my only question about, I wanted to add to what we've already said, like for this to be my last policy meeting and to have this be part of it feels really, really good. And I know it's not done, but we started this goodness gracious, the conversation around the importance of this work from my time on the board started maybe a year in, so 7 years later. 7 years to get to the point where we put a policy for review. Yeah, that's a really long time. There was a thing called COVID in the middle of it that kind of messed everything up, but it's very, very rewarding to see this.
You'll get to vote on it for sure. Here you go, yeah.
Well, this is your last meeting.
It's as my husband was saying, like, where are you going? I thought that was tomorrow. No, it's when it's.
Yeah.
Where are you going? All right.
It takes 916 volunteers and a for that too.
So there was just a one sentence addition, I believe, here to the AR. We looked at the crowdfunding policy last month, and we
okay.
just wanted to add a sentence to the policy that says that the crowdfunding requirements also apply to volunteer groups.
Any questions?
So is that the only change then? Okay. Cause I saw we just recently did.
We had just looked at it,
Yeah,
right?
the one thing I did wanna mention is, do you have any questions?
No,
No. The one thing I did wanna mention is under guidelines. Just this ending paragraph where it talks about volunteer being a privilege. I just wondered, is there a way to word that that might be more consistent with, you know, when we talk about the purpose for acknowledging the valuable contributions that volunteers can make, and I understand the spirit behind it is that, you know, we do retain the right to discontinue volunteering if, you know, there are a set of circumstances that might require us to do that, but feels a little icky. I don't know.
I hear you. I've also seen, it's like anything else, right? There's 99 point something% of volunteers who volunteer are great volunteers, right? I've also seen volunteers do egregious things. It's like, you need firm language to say that's it, you're done, right? You berated this student, you did something totally inappropriate, you had something on your person that clearly shouldn't have been in the school, right? And you want policy language just that says, look, you're not gonna follow the rules, you're out, but I hear you. I'm open to, if the committee's got suggestions, certainly open to considering changes.
I don't know how everybody else feels. Like, can we say that? Can we say what we need to say without following the privilege? Do we have to follow the privilege? Or is that sort of part of? I don't know, is that
You
part
can
of?
say the volunteer position is not a right. As such, any volunteer position or service can be eliminated at time. You can get rid of the, but rather a privilege which is conferred by the board administration. That could come out.
I mean, it's small, but I just was less.
Fewer words.
It retains the purpose, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately.
Well, doesn't it kind of mean that just because you sign up to volunteer doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to? So that's where the privilege comes in play, because if they only need 2 parents at a party and 6 sign up, then you have to go with the first 2 that signed up. The other 4, you know, you just have to say thank you for volunteering, but you're not needed. And hopefully there's no, this sentence will prevent backlash from people saying that they're being treated unfairly because they didn't get a chance to volunteer at the Halloween party.
Well, would you be okay with us just ending it here, saying it is not a right? And as such, any volunteer position may be eliminated every time, just eliminating this bravado privilege.
Oh, okay.
Would you be okay with that? That's what we're sort of, what do you think about that?
I kind of like that it says privilege, because it is a privilege to be able to volunteer at the school. Like, not everybody, like, it's something that you should be proud of, and so you should come presenting your best self. You shouldn't be messy and sloppy, you should know the rules, you know, you don't wear t-shirt that says Budweiser and a MAGA hat too. You know, you just, well, I should say that.
Thank you.
But a New York Yankees hat in Eagle territory, you know what I mean? So,
What about an opportunity instead of a privilege?
opportunity.
From what it's worth, We see this, I think, from different seats. I think that parent who comes in and berates a child, I want the strongest language possible and to say,
Yeah.
as the person leading the district, I want to be able to say to that person, you have violated that privilege of being a volunteer.
Okay.
But in this case, I really like what we did with the public comment piece, because I did feel icky there, but more worth reconsidering. Here, I feel like I want to be in a
Okay.
very firm.
Okay. That makes sense.
For what it's worth.
That makes sense.
Can I ask this has been on my mind about the volunteer policy that everybody has to do a background check. Like, is that state law now? Is that governed by state law that it says anybody that volunteers at a school has to have a background check?
Yeah, you have to.
Okay, I thought it was just something that is part of our policy, cause I'm like, if you're just coming in to read to a classroom, you're not really having any contact with the kids. They're
Correct.
all sitting down and you're in a chair reading and
And those individuals would be covered by our school visitors policy, not by our volunteers policy. So volunteers are folks who are responsible for the care or well-being of a child. So if you're going. to
so
take-
if you so that's the same for May Day, when you're just doing a booth, like, you're not supervising the kids,
Right.
you're just playing, they're just playing the game.
Right,
So,
you come in and read a book during American Education Week, or you're come in for Grandparents' Day, or anything like that, you're a school visitor, you're not a volunteer in those cases. Same thing like the event you just mentioned, you would be a visitor. So you don't need your clearances for those activities, but when you volunteer, that is a threshold, that once you clear that threshold, you do reach your clearances for certifications.
And we oftentimes talk about, does that volunteer have the opportunity to create or establish a relationship with a child? So someone who is coming into every single event, coming for Halloween, for Thanksgiving, for the holiday party, coming for the Valentine's party, those people, because they are there on a consistent basis, like a school person who would be considered a volunteer in the English classes.
okay. So is there anywhere, I guess it can't be in the policy, but is there anywhere way that you can say the difference between visiting and volunteering?
So this paragraph here,
Because right now, everybody, regardless, and it's putting some parents off from visiting.
I would say I completely agree with that, because I remember last year, for the fifth grade, the end of the fifth grade festivities, there was a whole thing at SRS about like, do you need clearances, do you not? And I remember Dr. Tuck, actually, she sent out, and I think she had just made it herself, like a chart with like, this is where you just need to scan your driver's license, this is where you need your clearances. So I think it would actually be really good to have something that like, as a district, we could look at, because that's confusing, I think, for everyone. I
Yeah,
totally agree.
because
What I would say though is that unless you have not lived in the state for the last 10 years, you only need 2 of the clearances, you don't need your fingerprints, and those 2 clearances can both be sought out online, and they are both free. So in terms of that kind of a burden, if I have to go somewhere else and I have to make an appointment and I have to pay some money to do that, that would only be for the fingerprints, and that's only if you've not lived here.
And I think where it gets confusing too is for parents who aren't super internet savvy, right? And then people do I need to do it for my parents, and that.
yeah, or when they have like Veterans Day and they invite a soldier that comes in, like, does he have to have
I mean,
clearance?
if it's a
Or-
one-time, event, as long as there is a staff member with them, right? So like, we should never leave a volunteer or a presenter, or someone coming in to work with our kids, share something about a, career path, whatever, alone in a room with our students without saying them.
Yeah.
So in that instance, someone, a veteran coming in on Veterans Day, there's gonna be staff members there. That's a visitor.
We can ask our communications team to draw up the difference between visitor and volunteer, just so they have that distribution.
Just put a little blurb in the, for a community announcement on the webpage, maybe. Like, take Dr. Tuck's chart.
That's right.
Yeah, right.
Ask her for her chart.
That's right.
And they'll say,
I'm sure I could find it. I don't know. The district service center.
And then our last one is 918, Title I, Parent and Family Engagement. There's just a requirement that this be reviewed annually. It's arguable whether it needs to come before the board annually or whether it just needs to be internally reviewed, but we have space on the agenda to list it, so we talked with you, so there's no changes that we have proposed.
As we're trying to figure out.
What's
yeah, I was like, well, looks okay to me, this is on Dr.
Any questions? We did talk the last time around, I remember talking a lot about like how were we engaging the families and what kind of feedback were we getting from those efforts to.
Yeah, and I mean, I thought about it, it's not really, that's sort of like secondary to the policy itself. Thought about that a little bit. I did wonder, there was a statement in here about referencing when this plan is made available to the board, the Title I plan. And
We've never had
Sure, I
that
can remember.
presented.
done that. I mean, but again, that's not really, that's secondary to, that's the policy itself, so.
Julie, our board governance, so it's right, what do our policies say? We asking for. Sorry,
Yeah.
great question.
Bottom of page.
I think since I've been on the board, we haven't had.
Had a discussion, I think we had a presentation with maybe Dr. I can't remember who was.
Now, it would have been Dr. Wiskowski, I'm sure that
You're
Dr.
right,
Pratt
you're right.
went to.
Yes.
Speak with.
Yes.
This year about
Okay,
where we are.
okay.
So that would come under educational affairs.
Yeah, Dr. Muskowski definitely did speak to us at a committee meeting about that. It's not good. Any other questions?
So it sounds like the committee's comfortable with all of those forms to the board. So we will do that. And then unfortunately, no one's here with us for public comment, so I think that means that they think you all are doing a wonderful job. Our next meeting is scheduled for December 2nd. Before we adjourn the meeting, I would like to thank Swarthmore for her service and her time with us. For her final meeting with us, and we appreciate all the work that she's done to shepherd us through a couple of years. Lots of changes, and lots of policies to try to align with.
She doesn't get any swag. Like
Yeah, last month. Everything's good. It's been a pleasure and we're gonna, hopefully we'll have continuing membership on the policy committee. Some of us maybe not so much, I don't know. But it's important.
I'm signing back up for it.
I knew you wouldn't
I'm
stay
not
away for
finished
long.
yet. We got
You
work
weren't.
to do.
It's really important work. It's not necessarily the most glamorous at times. Sometimes it's frankly a little boring, but it's important. So I want to thank all of my committee members for making it kind of fun sometimes. And for all of our administrators and Mr. Diaz, it's been a pleasure to work with you. You are amazing at being able to work with us, explain things in layperson terms, and just so incredibly collaborative. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I shared it. It's a great team to work with here, and I appreciate it having.
And Kelly, I would like to say that you did a wonderful job as our chair. And that it's been a pleasure working on the policy committee with you. We've had our differences,
That's
but
okay.
we've worked them out.
Yeah.
We've come to a compromise and I just like how, we've all, three of us, four of us have worked together. And that goes to the way that you have handled being chair, because you bring such positive energy, even when you're exhausted and on your last wit's end because the puppy got out when you were about to leave. And you still come with a smile and are so gracious. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, appreciate your leadership. I can't imagine, yeah, I'm still kind of in denial that you're not gonna be here next month.
Yeah.
Oh, it's gonna be really hard. I'm gonna end up crying and coordinating, so you can't make me cry, because I'm only good.
You're saying this, I'm a sympathetic crier, so don't. Hey, we're gonna have a big problem here. We're gonna need a no crying policy.
Yeah, right, that's good. I'll tell Dave to kick me into the table here. Thank you, everyone.
So we can move to adjourn the meeting.